Welcome to this session, which is, I have to thank GFN team for recognising and plugging this gap. It's really, really nice to have consumers and vendors actually get their point across, and for you guys to listen and then shoot us down if necessary. So the way I'd like to do this is, please read the bios of the people that are concerned here, so that we don't have to introduce ourselves, and I'll just be passing the mic up and down, up the panel until all the presentations are complete. Don't bother with any applause at all. Say we want to maximise the amount of time that we have for debate. Okay, here we go. Oh, by the way, I'm Scottish, so I'll try and temper my accent a little bit. I do speak English, but sometimes you wouldn't think so. And also, I'll pre-warn you, I can be a bit brash at times, and I come across as being quite offensive and aggressive. It's not intended as a personal attack on anyone at all. I'd say what I'm going to try and do here, if you can imagine yourself, me sitting here, and I'm looking at a crowd here. You scare the hell out of me, to be perfectly honest. But I'll treat you as if you're a bunch of government officials, researchers, tobacco control, whatever. Say anything that I do say that you find offensive, it's nothing personal, come up and attack me about it afterwards. And I'll start off with my anecdotal story. I'll be using the words you and me a lot, or you and us. It's not a nice way to deal with it, but it's the only way I can deal with it. Okay, well, here we go. I was a devout smoker, and nobody was going to stop me from smoking. Any no smoking days and stuff like that. I said, well, unless you're going to have a national smoking day tomorrow, then you can forget it. It ain't going to happen. But having said that, I accidentally switched to vaping in 2011, and I never looked back. On my journey, I found some terrific vape community groups online. It was a happy time. It was a great time. We found a new lease of life, and there was a great community out there. And a big thanks to David Don, who's sadly not with us this year. But he pulled this all together and had this thing called Vapor Trails TV, where we all shared ideas, and we all had a great time. But the happiness quickly turned into disbelief. There was people out there trying to, quotes, regulate, which means restrict, and ban this miracle product. This then turned out to be disappointment when I found it out. Yep, that's true. That's what they're going to do. So that's when I decided to become an activist. Then followed anger and resentment at the level of misinformation, the petty-mindedness being used to fuel these restrictions. We lobbied hard against the TPD2 in Europe. We were listened to, but mainly ignored. The UK fared best in the restrictions. They've done actually quite well in the UK. We definitely come off best in Europe. But what on earth were you thinking? Come on, 10 ml bottles. How petty, how stupid, and how ungreen. So you end up having to buy 10 bottles, decanting them into a 100 ml bottle and throwing away the 10 ml bottles. Utterly ridiculous. 2 ml tanks. What's that all about? You know, we're not kids. Please, please, please get rid of this stupid rule. Why should I have to fill a tank 4 times a day instead of just once? Some people might think I've got the maths wrong on that, but come and talk to me about it and I'll explain exactly why. 18 milligram nicotine. You're probably going to say, you're lying, it's 20 milligram. No, it's not. It's 18. No vendor in his right mind would produce 20 milligram nicotine and sell it to the public. There are 1 or 2 that do it. I fear for them, because trading standards are going to come in, take one of those bottles away, and if it's a milligram over, they're stuffed. Not a good idea at all. Plus, I can tell you, we're losing lots of smokers because of this 18 milligram limit. I've been involved in several studies where I know that 24 milligrams would have tipped them over. And I indeed make up 24 milligram nicotine and give it out where it's required. Okay, and now we're threatened with TPD3. How much more damage are you going to do? Come on, you're getting silly. Hopefully TPD3 will reverse some of this rubbish that we've had. I really hope so, but somehow I don't think so. Anyway, much later that anger turned into acceptance. Acceptance that I wasn't particularly good at activism. There's a lot better people out there that can talk a lot better than me. So I thought, nah, time to move on. Then a new door opened. I was asked to become involved in a study. Maybe I could make an impact there. Yeah. So a big thanks to Professor Linda Bald And her team at Stirling University, absolutely wonderful people. She came to me, would you like to be involved in a study? I jumped at the opportunity and I learned such a lot from that. Next up was Neil McKegney and his team, Chris Russell, Joanna Myler. You heard about that study last year at GFN. What a terrific study. Funded by tobacco. Do you think I care? The only thing I care about is that these studies are accurate and honest. Do not attack the funder. Attack the study. And I thought you'd want to take more money off the tobacco industry anyway, you know. You're taking enough off them in taxes as it is, and they've got plenty of money, so let's not worry about that. I've seen some horrific studies in the past. Absolutely horrific. The sort of stuff ranging from the formaldehyde study, diacetyl, all that kind of stuff, roundly debunked by our good friend Konstantinos Farsalinos, who actually had to come to Vapers for crowdfunding just to repeat those studies. It's ridiculous. Anyway, the problem with those studies is that those two things, formaldehyde and diacetyl, are still about today. And they're still putting smokers off. They're putting vapers off as well. Because every time we hear the headlines, a new study has found, we go, oh my God, what have they done now? Is it going to be truthful? Whatever. Are we going to have to go and pay more money to get it debunked? Whatever. And how many smokers is it going to put off? As I say, the damage is done. It still persists today. I see another study that I got involved in trying to recruit smokers. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to recruit smokers because of these headlines. We had to walk the streets of Glasgow looking for smokers and ask them if they would be prepared to take part in the study, where they would get free e-cigarettes and also quite a hefty cash incentive. And the amount of people that said to us, no, I don't want to get popcorn lung. I'm going to stick with smoking. That's appalling. It really is. And those responsible really need to stop doing this kind of thing. So do you see the damage it's done? Do you care? I don't know. I certainly do. One person in power in my home country of Scotland insisted that smoking 5 cigarettes a day was as bad as smoking 20 cigarettes a day. Where's the logic in that? Can anyone tell me? But I've almost given away who it is, but never mind. She was adamant. That's the case. What she doesn't understand is that those smokers are lightly on a pathway. They're on a journey, the same journey that I went through. It's called dual use. And eventually, you go down and you wake up one day and you don't even pick up a cigarette. Leave them alone. For goodness sake, if they're down to 5 from 20, leave them alone. Let them continue their journey. Yeah, that's progress for that smoker. Definitely. Don't interfere with them. Don't insult them. We're really lucky in Scotland that we had a vapor who came up with a brilliant idea. A guy's called Colin Murray Robertson, and he invented the Glasgow School of Vape. It's renowned worldwide for how good it is. It basically brings vapors together from many different backgrounds and experiences. It was a meeting for like-minded people to share their thoughts and experiences of vaping products, and it was open to both vapors and smokers who wanted to know more. So we've done more for public health than some of you guys have done, I can assure you. The 5th Glasgow School of Vape was held only a few months ago. Rip-roaring success. Absolutely wonderful. Special mention for a couple of the guys there, Eddie Black, Arthur Watson, and Joseph Anderson, to name but 3. The latter, Joe, he has a story to tell. I wish he was here today. He would melt your heart. He really would melt your heart. What a wonderful, wonderful guy. All of these things are anecdotes. I'm fed up with that word anecdotes. How many anecdotes do you need to make up an evidence? Anybody got a formula for it? I'd love it. I'd love to know. I hope I'm not going on too long here. We've also got a very good range of vendors in Scotland, and indeed the UK. Some of them are horrific, some of them are terrific. We've got 3 main vendors in Scotland, and I've got to put a special mention out to these guys. Laurie Jones at Emporium, Alan McCleavey at Vaporized, and Ian Green in Southampton, but most importantly, Tom Russell at the refill station in Glasgow. He loves smokers. He educates smokers, and he gets them off cigarettes with his kit. Also, Tom does for us is he helps us select kit for studies. He knows how to get smokers to switch. He helps us select the kit. He provides the e-liquids and he does everything at cost. So he's no interest in it whatsoever other than what he can do for us. He's not doing anything for himself. The others that I mentioned there are great because they come to me and they provide me with what I call distressed stock, which is stock that they no longer sell. They've moved on to newer stuff, but that stock is perfectly valid for smokers to switch. It'd be Ego batteries, small tanks, and they've literally given me thousands of them. In fact, I got a text message this morning from Southampton saying, I've got a pile more kit, Andy. Can I send it up to you? Because I know you'll do good with it. So I've obviously said, yep, get it up here. It causes a little bit of a problem in our house. My loving partner, Lorraine, we've got a computer room that is full of e-cigarettes. You've never seen so many e-cigarettes in your life. I promise you, Lorraine, I'll clear that out one day. I've said that many times. There's also the bad guys, the kiddie-friendly labelling guys. Stop it. It's counterproductive, and we've got to fight your case. We can't fight a case like that. Just stop it. The other thing's IP theft. Shocking. We're against it. We don't want it. You don't need it. Don't do it, please. Now, through the Glasgow School of Vape, we've assembled a team of experienced vapors. They've got a great understanding of these devices. They can look at a smoker, watch him take a draw of a cigarette and know what device and liquid that he's going to need to get him to shift. And maybe a little bit of tweaking here and there, but they know how to do this. There's no point in you starting a study and handing someone over an e-cigarette and saying, there, get on with it. And they need support. They need the right device. They need the right e-liquid. They need the right strength of nicotine. These guys have got a knack of being able to do that. I really appreciate these guys. Do you researchers out there know how to do this? Do you know how to do it? Or do you just hand out an e-cigarette and say, there you go? And then you produce some miraculous results from this? I don't know. Do you understand MTL? Do you understand DTL, restricted DTL? Nicotine content and its effects, PG ratios, vapor's tongue. Do you know any of those? Do you know the side effects of nicotine and how to combat them? The side effects of vaping as opposed to smoking. There's lots of them. We know how to deal with that. We can give you the answers straight away. Talk to us. You need to, if you want an effective study, talk to us. If you don't know those answers, I say, don't even bother starting your research. We'll just look at it and say, oh, well, no, they never consulted us. We want to help you to get it right. Oh, and don't do what one of the researchers has done. I'm still involved in this study. It's utterly ridiculous. They're giving smokers sub-ohm devices. Unbelievable. The chances of the smokers actually switching on a sub-ohm device are pretty poor. Granted, some will. Some will go on okay with it, but not very many. Moving on to funding of research. I don't care where the funding comes from. You're all up and saying, oh, it's tobacco funded. I don't care as long as it's accurate and honest. Stop attacking the funders and concentrate on the quality of the research. If the research is credible, let it pass. If not, then attack it, but don't attack the funders. The amount of abuse that the Smoke Free Foundation is getting at the moment is quite frankly appalling. You should be happy. You're taking more money off the tobacco companies. You're already taking wheels off them in tax. Without that tax, you probably wouldn't even be able to conduct your research because you get it in the form of grants. Half of you will probably get pensions funded by tobacco companies. When you look deeper into it, I'm not saying that's true of everyone, but most people who have got a decent pension, you'll find that some of the funding is by tobacco companies. If everyone stopped smoking tomorrow, your funding would dry up. Again, I have to stress this, attack the bad research, not what you consider to be bad funding. Oh, here's a good one for you. This time last year, I held up this device. Just like that. Just like that, and I slated it. It was rubbish. It was made by a tobacco company. It leaked. It spat. It left horrible taste in your mouth. They hadn't got it right at all. So, to my shock and surprise, that same tobacco company came to me last night and said, Andy, we listened to what you said. Try this. Same device, completely fixed. No spitting, no leaking, no nothing. That's a great device now. And I can take that device out and offer it forward for certain studies. Thank you very much, tobacco industry. You've done more for me than a lot of other people have done. Thank you. Okay, I think that's about all of it for me. I know I've been a little bit long, and I do apologise. As I say, I want to thank my long-suffering partner, Lorraine. She's been an absolute rock. And finally, this is going to hurt me, I'm sorry. I want to dedicate this talk To a great friend and advocate who's not with us this year. Our good friend in Australia, Andrew Mackay, has sadly been struck down with quite an aggressive form of cancer. I was really looking forward to meeting with him again this year. Unfortunately, can't make it. Godspeed, Andrew. Honestly, you can get through this, and we'll see you here at GFN again next year. Thank you very much.
I'd like to start off by talking about a customer of ours that made quite a big impact on us. Back in 2013, Caroline had terminal cancer, and she needed oxygen virtually all the time just to breathe. She had trouble speaking, she was virtually bedridden, she had no pleasure from eating food. And the doctors had told her she had at best a few days to live. Then she discovered electronic cigarettes. When we met her a few weeks later, she radically improved. She didn't need oxygen all the time. She could get outside, she could walk most of the time without assistance, and she could talk easily. And she went on to improve again. And she knew that she didn't have very long to live, but I can't tell you how over the moon she was to regain some of her quality of life. And she was full of praise for the person in our vape shop for the lengths he had gone to find exactly the right vape device for her. Caroline went on to live for another 3 months, and that's 3 months she wouldn't have had without vaping. It's 3 months in which she could walk outside and breathe fresh air. 3 months she could eat food and enjoy it. 3 months she could really spend valuable time with loved ones. Now, there's no doubt to my mind that a good vape shop has the ability to make a real difference to people's lives. But the emphasis is really on good vape shop. And I think a bad vape shop can do as much damage as it can do good. So what makes a bad vape shop? I think one factor is a focus on short-term profit. In the retail industry called average transaction value, where you are trying to maximize the revenue from every single sale. And that's really not right for people who are trying to switch to vaping. And I remember long ago, a 90-year-old lady walked into one of our shops with a vape mod that had cost her £100, and she had no idea how to use it. And we sent her out with a £20 starter kit. Another problem is the lack of knowledge that some shops have, and this is particularly bad in shops which don't just sell electronic cigarettes, but they are selling devices to people who don't know how to use them, and they can't explain to them how to use them. And I remember one customer who rang us up in tears after she bought a vape device from a newsagent, and she didn't know how to use it. They couldn't tell them how to use it. Now, some shops have got the knowledge, but they don't know how to translate this knowledge to the customer. And the shops all over the UK, you'll walk in and they're using terms like MTL, DTL, sub-ohm, coil, resistance. None of this means anything to someone who has just switched to vaping. Finally, some people just lack the passion that I think you really need to make a vape shop successful and serve the needs of the customers. So conversely, what makes a good vape shop? I think the most important thing is passion and caring about the customers. And we really value some of our staff, the sort of people who will spend an hour with a customer who doesn't speak English, translating every word using Google Translate until they can find the right product for that customer. We value the people who will go to a customer's house at the end of their shift because that customer's just come out from our operation and can't make it to the shop. They'll go to the house and take them their e-liquid so that they don't go back to smoking. A good shop knows to carry out needs analysis. They know the right questions to ask smokers to find out what they need from smoking so that they can help that customer match the product to their needs. A good shop has the knowledge. You have to know the products back to front in order to find the right product. And that's not always easy in an industry where the products are changing so rapidly. But a good vape shop also has to be able to use the right language so that they can translate those terms like MTL and DTL into phrases that a customer who doesn't know vaping can understand. Good people in vape shops can also read the emotions of the shopper. A lot of people are still intimidated when they come into a vape shop, you know, and we teach our staff to read the signs and don't go straight into selling a vape product. Just have a chat with them. Just have a chat with them until they're relaxed. And then once you do that, then you can go about finding their needs. Finally, a good vape business has to marry their long-term goals to customer needs. They have to marry their long-term profit to customer needs. Now, profit's always a dirty word, but the reason vaping has been successful is because of the interplay between consumer needs and demands and the response and innovation and customer service by the industry. And the profit's been the driver for this. The problem is when you get that focus on short-term profit, when people are trying to maximize the transaction from every, maximize the revenue from every transaction. And that's when you get vape shops selling customers expensive high-end devices that they don't need and that will not work for them. What happens? The customer goes back to smoking and the business loses a customer. When the business is focused on providing the right product for the customer, what you get is the customer switches to vaping and the business gets a long-term customer. It sounds simple, but you'd be surprised by how many businesses just don't get this. But I believe that the businesses that truly understand and serve the needs of the customer are going to be the ones here for the long haul. And those are the businesses that will continue to help people like Caroline.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Clarisse. I'm from the Philippines. Before I start, I would just like to thank KAC, Harry, Jerry, Jessica, Joanna, Suli for getting me here, as well as Inko and Kafra. This is my first time at GFN, and I'm a law student. And one of our professors from the school I go to is also here. So I hope I am not being graded for my presentation today. All right. My presentation, it's purely from a consumer's point of view. So do not expect anything that is technical or something scientific, because my background is definitely not within those lines. All right, so at the front line, what do consumers need? Before we tackle that, who is a consumer? So by definition, it's a person who purchases goods and services for personal use. Basically, everyone is a consumer. In this context, we're talking about people who are trying to do the switch from cigarette smoking to vaping, heat-not-burn, and other safer nicotine products. To give you a little bit of background so that you will be able to understand the needs that I will be talking about later, I will also discuss the market in the Philippines at the moment. So we have vape shops with actual stores inside and outside shopping malls. There's actually one near the office. Sellers who conduct business online. So some of them have their own websites. They also make use of Facebook, Instagram, other online markets such as Lazada and Shopee. These are online marketplaces which are abundant in the Philippines. And of course, we have the black market. Also, a bird's eye view of e-cigarettes in the Philippines now. As of last week, June 3, according to the Department of Finance, on its third and final reading, vapor products will also be taxed progressively. This is in line with sin tax for universal healthcare. So here you will see how much it will be taxed. So for 0 to 10 ml, 10 pesos, and so on and so forth. Right now, we have a progressive tax system, which we call train law. Basically, it's gonna increase everything, the price of everything, basically. Okay? So that sin tax will be used for universal health care, which we have in the Philippines. Also, the Department of Health maintained its position that e-cigarettes should be treated and regulated no differently than other tobacco products until these alternatives to smoking are proven safe for consumption. So you will see there that there's already an issue because vapor or vape products, they shouldn't be categorized as tobacco products. Some senators seek to tax e-cigarettes properly since it helps people wean away from smoking regular cigarettes, hence should be taxed lower. This was brought up in the Senate hearing, I think last week or last week. However, the Duterte administration considers a total ban on e-cigarettes according to the Department of Finance. Personally, I do think that the Department of Finance is not exactly at the correct position to say something like that because they are the Department of Finance. It's not the Department of Health. Also, to give you an example, vaping is regulated in Quezon City. It's one of the biggest cities in Manila. So they have a city ordinance, and it is signed by the former Mayor Herbert Bautista. The ordinance prohibits the use of e-cigarettes in certain areas, such as places of worship, hospitals, educational facilities intended for minors, and it also prohibits buying and selling to minors. Personally, again, I do think this is a fair regulation because, of course, we do not want to be selling to minors. Places of worship, as much as possible, of course, we would want to respect people's beliefs and traditions. Okay, so what do consumers want? Who are we? People trying to quit smoking? What do we want? Fair regulations. I made use of 3 A's: accessibility, affordability, and availability. This might be familiar to you because this is also used in public health care. So accessibility, fair regulations, and not total ban of e-cigarettes, as well as heat-not-burn devices or products. That is a typographical error. Laws including ordinances which aim to help people who are trying to quit smoking not crush their chances at doing so. Fair regulations. Regulations, no problem. Okay, because it's not only through taxation, because we are also trying to look at the safety of people who are trying to quit cigarette smoking. There are some cases in the Philippines which, sadly, there were some accidents because simply the product is not regulated properly. Affordability. Taxes are the lifeblood of the government. I think this is a universal ideology, and they are used to finance basic services such as education, healthcare, as well as infrastructure, all vital to the economy's growth and improvement of the people's lives. So as mentioned earlier, we have sin tax to fund universal healthcare in the Philippines. Reasonable tax system and tax implementation so as not to impose a de facto ban on e-cigarettes as well as H&Bs. Affordability will lead to accessibility. Taxation, it's an inherent power of the state in the Philippines. I think it also applies to other countries, though I'm not sure. What I do want to tackle about affordability is that e-cigarettes, such as this one right over here, it's not exactly that affordable, okay? And Philippines is it has one of the most cigarette smokers in the whole world. I think we are at top 15. So, and this number, it does not only speak of people who are in the middle class and upper class. Majority of these smokers come from the lower class. And I do not mean to condescend or to offend anyone, but these are the lowest of the lowest. Some of them do not eat. They would rather smoke a cigarette. how are we supposed to give them that chance of switching to safer nicotine products if, in the first place, safer nicotine products are not affordable? Availability, right to choose, to exercise that right, to act on their choice, and also no, to quit or die mentality. I think that has been established for years now. And accessibility will lead to availability. If we will make it accessible to everyone, then most likely it will be available everywhere. Yesterday at a panel discussion also that I attended, there is this speaker from Kenya, I think. He mentioned that safer nicotine products, it's not illegal in their country, but it's not available. So how are they going to tell people that, hey, you should consider switching to safer nicotine products because they are safer, but it's not available? How are they supposed to do that switch? So basically the government will what? Try to deprive that person of his right to exercise his choice, to act on his choice. They will give you the right to choose, but they will not let you exercise that right. And last but not the least, open-mindedness as well as welcoming changes. When I speak of that, we talk about medical researches. Information that is legitimate, definitely not fake news. I think this is prevalent in, well, all over the world. And transparency with government agencies and bureaus. Ultimately, what do consumers want? To quit smoking. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon to you all. My name is Ángeles Muntadas. I chair Vape, the Single Users Association in Spain, and I also serve on INCO's governing board. I'd like to point out just a few points focusing on the importance of vape shops. Number one, I'd say that vape shops are crucial in public health. E-cigarettes are now the most popular and most successful way of quitting smoking, and are beginning to put those stop smoking services who refuse to apply THR policies out of business. Vape shop employees are vapers, or should be, and it's very common for vapers to help other vapers. They regard e-cigs as viable smoking cessation tools and relish their role in assisting others in taking what employees view as positive health actions. And why? Because vaping helped themselves quit smoking, and they feel enthusiastic about sharing what for us ex-smokers and now vapers is nothing less than a miracle. Number two, the majority of vape shop customers are vapers who already have quit smoking. But I think that vape shops, at least in Spain, my country, should focus more on smokers. After all, an advanced vapor is already a loyal customer. So it's those millions of smokers who are the real potential market for vape shops. A big problem is that smokers who want to switch fear nicotine, and so do many vapers. I don't really know why there's this general obsession to lower down nicotine or even to avoid it. And I must say, this is due mostly to legislation itself, based on ignorance, and hence leading to a profound lack of confidence in users. Consumers deserve much better from our lawmakers and public health officials, because these know that people smoke for the nicotine, but it's not the nicotine that kills, it's the tar. In Spain, vape shop vendors tend to give low or not enough nicotine liquids. We must remember too that in Europe, nicotine is limited to 20 milligrams. But in any case, it'll always be safer to vape 3 milliliters of an 18 milligram nicotine liquid than 30 milliliters of 3 milligram nicotine liquid. Number three, Vape shop staff play a central role in providing customers with product information. And many provide smoking cessation advice too, which is great. There is a need for clear and easily accessible information on the health effects and effectiveness of e-cigarettes for smoking cessation to ensure that vape shop staff provide customers with accurate information on their products. The vaping market is so extensive that there's almost a specific device and e-liquid for each vapor or smoker who wants to switch. The possibility of choice is essential. This wide range of devices, e-liquids, etc., cannot be waived if you don't want to decrease the success potential of this unique alternative to smoking. But at the same time, this wide range of products can be a double-edged sword, since it can burden the new vapor who doesn't really know what products would work best for him or her. While choosing a device, e-liquids, etc., if the economic cost is too high, it most probably will make this new vapor back down and give up even on trying. It's especially important here too to give the customers the chance of testing devices and e-liquids, and even teaching them how to vape. For example, how to take a drag. Number 4, vape shop staff have the opportunity to inform customers on existing scientific evidence, although boring them to death with too much information is not a very good idea, unless they ask for it, of course. I'd say that the report on e-cigarettes by Public Health England and its updates should be like the Bible of any vape shop. Basic and solid information to clear up myths and prejudices is very necessary to dispel fears that may arise while in novel users, which may take them to give up vaping. For example, and as you all know, when scaremongering news appear all over the media, which disgracefully occurs too often, by the way. Number 5, vaping is growing fastly thanks to word of mouth to smokers who want to quit but can't, but also to smokers who don't want to quit. A vape shop is a place, or should be a place, to quit smoking where smokers aren't demonized, as they are in most stop smoking services in countries where THR is rejected. A vape shop is a place where you get constant help and advice in solving problems regarding your device, batteries, e-liquids, etc., but also in getting quick answers to doubts that may arise while the smoker is making the switch, such as why the coughing, why a scratchy throat, why am I feeling a bit dizzy, etc. In other words, support and even monitoring, I think, are crucial. And now, a vape shop and its staff should be the place where you find out that vaping is the easiest and most successful and enjoyable, such a key word, way of quitting smoking. And that's exactly why we're so hated and criticized, because we're able to give up smoking and still enjoy nicotine, but without the harm produced by combustion. Technology has liberated nicotine from smoke. And the worst of it all, quotations on worst, is that this miraculous phenomenon on smoking cessation has been led by us, the users. Thank you.
Greetings everyone, I'm Zed, a French tobacconist, and as such, I have the privilege to meet hundreds of smokers on a daily basis. And I have 2 types of future vapers that I meet. The first one, which I will call the easy one, would be people that would walk up to me spontaneously and ask about vaping products. So I have breakdown into 4 steps the advising process. First, get the history of the smoker. Has the smoker cut down recently his cigarette consumption? If so, this smoker could be considered still as a heavy smoker. Second, finding the best draw possible to one's best usage. Most of the time, it's going to be a mouse-to-lung MTL device. But even so, among MTL devices, you have different experiences. Some would offer a larger draw, some would be tighter. And what about the battery life? What about the design? Those are issues we will resolve together with the smoker. Third, we have to find one's favorite flavor. Usually, they would ask for a tobacco, a mint taste. But according to one of the study funded by Zhou, fruity and creamy flavor are twice more efficient than tobacco flavor. So I would always take my chances and offer a taste of a creamy or fruity flavor. And sometimes they would surprise themselves by liking those instead of the classic one. And fourth, we need to determine the nicotine strength together according to one's history and as well as the chosen device. Generally speaking, it's going to be higher than what they've been thinking. And it's going to be higher on what's been sold on average on the French market, because I want to give them the chance to have a high chance of smoking cessation by reducing nicotine cravings. And of course, one of the most important parts, the follow-up, to achieve a high rate of success. Ask them to come back. Ask them to give us feedbacks on what their experiences on the new experience. Then there's the other type of future vapor, which constitutes the majority of my customers and as well as the majority of customers in the French market, which are smokers who don't ask me anything about tobacco harm reduction. So how do I handle that? First, I look for clues. They could be looking at my vape product, or they could be complaining about the price hike in cigarettes, or they can be more and more concerned about their health. All those clues point out to an interest towards tobacco smoking cessation. That being said, sometimes it's not enough because it takes time for them to be ready to cross that bridge, because they walk up to me and ask for a pack of cigarettes. They didn't want to hear anything about tobacco harm reduction. And sometimes it takes time for me to build that trust between the customer and me, so the smoker can lower his guard down and allow me to inform him on tobacco harm reduction. Most of the time, they need to be reassured about what's true and what's false, given the fact that we're surrounded by fake news all the time. I will always try to inform them on basic knowledge about vaping, which is first, vaping is a consumer-driven alternative to smoking. It's a consumer-driven one, which happens to be much safer and much cheaper than tobacco in Western countries. Second, what nicotine is. It is not a poison. It can be converted to caffeine. So we can now use cigarettes to get strength against itself, meaning using nicotine extensively in vaping. Third, sometimes I would reassess some truths about vaping, like there's no lung popcorn lung, or there's no explosions in electronic control devices. But of course, as a vendor, I polished my sales pitch to the point that it was so efficient that at some point in my growing business, I started to stop listening to consumers. I was forcing them to buy vape products because my sales pitch was so efficient, which was a huge mistake. Because at some point that would ultimately fade. They would straight out quit vaping, or worst of it all, close their minds towards any future speech on tobacco harm reduction, because at first they felt forced by me. So now I restrain myself and I take a more human approach. I need to let them come to me, let them their stories and build one's motivation based on one's history. Like for mothers, they would be often concerned about smoking in front of their children. So how can I build her motivation towards that? I will tell her there's no second-hand vapor, there's no persistent smell, unlike tobacco. I can only show them the way. It's up to them to go through that door or not. One of the pillars of tobacco harm reduction and harm reduction in general is the empowerment one gets by distancing himself from his addiction. And for smokers, it starts with the decision to vape. It is up to them. I can only show them the door, and I will always do that. And what do you know? In my wake, other tobacco shops wanted to join my movement as well. So they started to ask me a lot of questions. So I started to set up a blog to share my experience, and then a YouTube channel as well. But still, it wasn't enough. So during last French Stop October, which happens in November in France, I launched a pro-vaping campaign throughout France throughout a few hundreds tobacco shops. But it wasn't enough yet. So I started to manage and create study groups across various social media platforms. But it wasn't enough. So I started to write in a magazine that is being distributed to the 24,000 tobacconists in France. And these are a few shops that I have been helping throughout internet or otherwise to help them transitioning from a smoking business to a vaping business. And lately, I have even been holding my first training sessions in France. This is it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
My name is Spike Babaian. If you want to know about me, you can read in the little book. But I've been vaping about 10 years, and I do just about everything in vaping. I have some vape shops, I do advocacy, I'm a registered lobbyist in the state of New York in the United States, and all that good stuff. 10 years ago, I wanted to tell everyone what an e-cigarette was. I said, this is the greatest thing ever. Everyone should have one, and I bought some for friends, and then I said, I can't give these to people. What if I find out in 10 years that they're killing people? So I raised some money, I did some research, and I co-authored a paper with a researcher from a university on toxicity of vapor to find out. It was the first one in the US in 2011, I believe. And I did a lot of work to do that because I only have a master's degree, and so I was not really qualified to do that. But I did do a lot of research in order to do that, and I was thankful I did. Once I got back the results, I didn't even wait for the publication because there was a lot of red tape, and it had to go back for peer review and all. It takes time. Most people here know that already. So I just went into business. As soon as I saw the results, I said, oh, look, not killing anybody, going into business. So I opened a vape shop. And then I opened another one, and then I opened another one, and then I opened another one. In the United States, we can't, and I apologize, I speak very quickly. I'm from New York. So for anyone who has difficulty with English, I apologize. We're not allowed in the United States to tell the truth about vaping products. If we do, our store can be closed because then we're making claims about a product that they're healthier when we don't have proof that this product with this liquid and this drip tip and this battery is healthier for this person with this liquid in it. So it's crazy, but we're not allowed to tell the truth. Because of that, one of the ways that we marketed when we first opened was we put up a sign, a big banner, and it said, "Smokers Wanted." And this was revolutionary because nobody wants a smoker. Smokers are disgusting, they're useless. And so, to have smokers wanted, it made the smokers feel appreciated. They would come and say, well, what do you want me for? I said, I want you to try this. It's free, just try it. This was back when we were allowed to give people free samples. Now the United States, you can't give it even a free puff. They have to pay you for a puff because otherwise we might addict children and they might become magically addicted to nicotine. So we got all these smokers in the beginning, and we let them try, and as soon as they puffed it, they had the same reaction I did. Oh my God, this is gonna help. I'm gonna stop smoking with this. And so you would see the look on their face, and you would just know, this is gonna work for this person. It's incredible. Because we weren't allowed truthful advertising, letting people puff it was the only way for us to tell them, look, this will work, puff it. No, don't, nothing, just here, puff. Don't even talk, just puff this. And they would be like, oh my God, this might work. So The market developed over the last 10 years, mostly by consumers. Someone else mentioned that, so I'm going to be very brief on that. But the consumers made the market. We took the products and we said, these e-cigarettes are okay and this could work, but it needs to be better. It needs to be faster. It needs to be hotter. It needs to be, bigger airflow. It needs all of these things. And so we, back years ago, 10 years ago, I'm sure Ann, you remember some of this, we took, electric toothbrushes and, adult sex toys that had adjustable features on them, and we turned them into e-cigarettes. And we said, look, a bigger battery. Oh, look, I can make it hotter. And we did all of these things because we needed it. It wasn't sufficient. I was smoking 35 cigarettes a day for more than 20 years. And by the way, I know I mentioned I've been off of cigarettes for 10 years, so that means I'm really, really old. But for 20 years, I smoked 35 cigarettes a day, and a little tiny e-cigarette with the little cartridges that we had to drip stuff into the, fiber filler material wasn't cutting it 10 years ago. And so all of these innovations took place by our own means. And of course, China said, hey, look, they put up a YouTube video again, let's make this. And so, of course, the industry developed based on what the consumers wanted. The people who changed in the beginning, early on, 10 years ago, were people who couldn't afford to smoke, either financially or health-wise, or just because we were nerds. We were nerds who were interested in how can this product work? What can I do to change it? And so in the beginning, they said, oh, look at all these weirdos sucking on their space sticks. And we were puffing on our sticks and blowing out something that looked like it was smoke. And everyone thought we were crazy, and we were. So that's okay. It was not easy to use. It was not easy to use an e-cigarette 10 years ago or even 8 years ago. You had to figure it out. You had to go watch videos and go on forums and ask questions and get help. And there were no stores. You couldn't go to a store and say, how do I use an e-cigarette? You had to go online and ask people questions and then try and interpret what they meant, because they were usually speaking with some foreign vernacular that you couldn't understand what they were saying. And you were like, what does this slang mean? I don't understand what this word, what does bloody hell mean? In America, we were confused, but the UK was the only ones we had to go by. We had to rely on the UK because they had it first. And so we did. The UK and the US worked together online on e-cigarette forum years ago to figure out how to make an e-cigarette better. As the devices got better and simpler and easier to use, I hope this won't be offensive to anybody, dumber people quit smoking using e-cigarettes. And unfortunately, we ended up with a lot of people who were not super motivated to use an e-cigarette. They did not want to put that much effort in. They just wanted to take it and stick their little pod in it and puff it. And that's great, because more people quit smoking, and we're happy about that. We want more people. Everyone should quit smoking. Smart people, medium people, dumb people, doesn't matter. Everyone should quit smoking. We want everyone off of cigarettes. However, it made it a little bit more challenging for those people that were not technologically savvy to stay off of cigarettes, because they got frustrated. This isn't working. I filled it up. I did what it said, and it's not working, and I don't know how to fix it. And there weren't enough shops. And so all of a sudden, 2014 came, and the boom happened, and the shops opened everywhere, and there were just so many shops. There were more shops than there were vapors in the United States. It was crazy. There was literally 10 vapors per shop. It was nuts, and stores opened so quickly that very quickly they started closing because there were just too many. But at least vapors had somewhere to go. They had somewhere to ask for help. They said, I don't know how to use this, I don't know how to fill it, I don't know how to do it. So we taught them. I opened my store first store in 2011 in a very not so nice neighborhood. In fact, our first month in business, someone got shot outside, and the second month in business, the building got robbed. So it was not a nice neighborhood, but we chose this neighborhood specifically. Why? Because it was a very bad neighborhood, and everyone there smoked. And we said, wow, all of these people smoke. And everyone said, yeah, but they don't have any money. And we said, who cares? They smoke. We want them to not smoke. Who cares if they have money? So we bought the least expensive kits. We made them as cost efficient as possible. And we started getting people off of cigarettes. And they told their friends, because smokers go outside to smoke. Because in New York, especially in New York City, you can't smoke anywhere. And so everybody told everybody. And then all of a sudden, we had lots and lots of customers. We quickly opened more stores, some in better neighborhoods, so that we could fund the stores that were in not such good neighborhoods, which we did. In the lower income areas, my most recent store, we went back to basics, and we opened again in East Harlem, in another not so nice neighborhood in New York City. Lower income, more difficult living situations, people who didn't have a lot and couldn't afford a lot. So we started working with people across the street from our store, and they were in projects or city-funded housing because they were low income. We gave them our kits at cost, and we said, this is what we pay, and this is what we're gonna charge you, and we want you to use this, and we want you to keep coming back. We discounted their liquids, so we make very little money on it, and we spent 30 to 40 minutes with every customer teaching them how to use it and how to make it work. We made sure that we told them that if we were not there and we were only open for 8 hours a day, that they should call us if they needed help. And we gave them our phone number, and we said, listen, even if it's the middle of the night, call and press number 8. It will go to someone's phone, and we will answer you, and we will help you figure out how to use it. Don't buy a pack of cigarettes until you call. And if we cannot help you, we will help you find a solution, but you need to call us first. So we were able to get a lot of these people off of cigarettes, which was wonderful. We also had next door to us a recovery facility for people who had addictions to drugs and alcohol. And almost 70 or 80% of these people are smoking cigarettes because they are addicts, and like ourselves, most of us need nicotine. They were all needing nicotine, and frequently. So we did the same for them. We gave them kits at cost, we converted them, we tried very hard. Unfortunately, the rehab facilities, because they're funded by the city of New York, they're not allowed to vape inside. And when they go outside, it's easier sometimes to have a cigarette. The nicotine delivery is more efficient, it happens faster, and so frequently we were losing them, and that was a problem. So we're working harder on finding better ways. Unfortunately, the rehab facility wants to confiscate all their products because they think they're putting drugs in it, and so that's making it a little bit difficult as well, but we're doing the best that we can. Briefly, since I want to make sure that I have some time for this, I want to tell a story about Bill Bryant. Bill Bryant is one of our customers. He came into our shop about a year and a half ago. And he said, he came in his wheelchair. He's 74 years old. He was wearing his Vietnam veteran hat, and he was looking very frail. And he said, I have $70. What can I get for this? My doctor told me to come see you, and he gave me this money. And I said, oh, your doctor told you to come. I said, are you from another country? I said, because in America, doctors don't do that. And he said, I go to Mount Sinai. I'm having cancer treatment right now. I have stage 4 lung cancer, and the doctor told me I have a few months left to live. He said, and he gave me this money because I'm on a fixed income and I don't have any money, and he told me I need to come here specifically to this shop and get an e-cigarette. And he told me to come and see the girl here. I said, I don't know who your doctor is, and I said, and please don't tell me, because it's better probably if I don't know. I said, because in America, doctors aren't allowed to do this. They're not allowed to tell you to get an e-cigarette, and they're certainly not allowed to give you money to go get one. I said, but I'm really glad that he did. So for the amount that he had, the $70 that he had, I gave him a $150 kit because he needed it. He was a pack plus a day smoker. I had been smoking for 61 years, I think he said. Which is crazy, and he now has a year and a half off of cigarettes. He's been through his chemo. At one point, he almost relapsed, but thankfully, I gave him my cell phone number, and I said, please call me if you get stuck, and he did. And he said, I'm stuck. I'm in the hospital. I just came out of a coma. My e-cigarette is here because I had it in my pocket when the ambulance picked me up. He said, but I have no liquid left, and they didn't bring my liquid. Can you please bring me more liquid? I don't know what I'm going to do, and they won't let me leave. So I did. I drove to the hospital and I brought him some liquid, because when you do that for the consumers and they have access in a situation like that where they cannot get to a shop, they will never choose to smoke. But if he didn't have it and he had said, I don't give a crap, I'm going outside, he would have bummed a cigarette off the first person that he saw. He would have said, give me a cigarette, please, I need nicotine. So this is reality. I still have a million more things, but I'm going to be very fast on them because I don't want to miss out on the 2 most important things. One of the things that I did want to mention when someone was sharing how to teach a new person is that there's something that people do when you let them try different flavors. People are really not, some of the researchers are not 100% understanding how important flavor is, but there's something that a consumer does when you let them try a flavor and that flavor is the right one. They can try 50 or they can try 100, but at some point, and it's universal in every country, they try that flavor and their eyebrow goes up like this, and they're like, ah. And as soon as one eyebrow goes up, that is the flavor. And if you don't see that, don't give them the flavor. If they say, yeah, this one's good, don't give it to them until that eyebrow goes up, because that is the flavor that will get them off of cigarettes. And that is one of the most important things that we've found after 10 years. Another one of the really important things is whether or not their nicotine is strong enough, because a lot of times they're not aware that 3 milligram is not sufficient for a pack-a-day smoker, and you need to make sure that they understand. Trying the right device is very important, because if they try the right device and they say, hey, this one is close, and then they end up getting it and it's not quite right, you can adjust that device without making them buy a whole new setup. This is especially important in low-income areas, near like where some of our stores are, Because the people can't afford to spend another $50 or $80 or $100 on a new setup. You have to fix that setup and make it work for them, which may mean getting them a different tank that's a little bit tighter air draw, or upping their nicotine level because they can't turn the power up because it's not an adjustable device because they had to get something affordable. But there are a million things that can be done, and one of the most important things that you can do with consumers is to tell them, if it's not working for you, you don't need to buy a whole new setup. You just need to come back in and we will fix it for you. If they understand that it's not going to cost them a whole lot more money to fix it, they will come back. They will not throw it in a drawer. They will not let it collect dust. They will come back, and then you can find them what works, even if it means that you have to mix their liquid with another nicotine to up it a little bit because they can't afford to buy another bottle. You have to make it work. I'm working on some level with Helen Redmond to try and get her to work with the city housing. She made a presentation earlier today. I'm not going to go into that. For those of you that are interested, you can ask her about her work. But the two most important things I didn't want to forget to cover briefly are in 10 years, in a couple of months, we're having a 10-year reunion for many of us in the UK and the US who have been vaping for 10 or more years. This is important because there will never be another event that will have so many people who've been vaping for 10 years or more in one place. And there will probably be more than 100 or 150 people at this event because there were that many of us vaping 10 years ago. So I would encourage you to please spread the word to anyone you know that's looking to do research, because although we don't have previous data from 10 years ago, we have long-term vapers vaping and not smoking for 10 years, and we don't have long-term health effects yet. And of course, that's the complaint. We don't have any long-term effects. Well, guess what? There's going to be 150 vapers who have been vaping for 10 years and not smoking, who were very heavy smokers, so that's probably something to keep in mind, that most of us were very heavy smokers, which is why we turned to vaping. And so there will be some health effects that maybe only heavy smokers would have, or heavy former smokers. The last thing that I wanted to say is normally I would have slides and there would be a picture of an apple up here. I didn't do slides, but the picture of the apple is up there so that I can say to people, if there was a 50-50 chance that eating this apple was going to kill you, would you eat it? And almost everybody will say, of course not. But every day, people go out and not just smoke cigarettes, but pay money for them, knowing that there's a 50-50 chance they're going to die from smoking. Nicotine is not addiction. It's a dependence on a product that people require to survive. They're willing to die to have it. Understand that although it's not the same as insulin and diabetes, people who use nicotine are not choosing to use nicotine. We are not wanting nicotine. Our bodies require nicotine. And for people who know that they're going to die, to continue to get nicotine, even when they know they're going to die probably from using it, that's something that we're not considering. And I think that everybody needs to kind of rethink that about dependence versus addiction. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much. And thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the session. And now we'll take some questions and answers, please. Okay, I'll start with John Summers, please. You guys want to use the microphone now, yeah?
Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you for what you've said. It's been really eloquent. And I wanted to pick up on something that a lot of people have said about participating with studies. We're really, really eager to say, yes, we'll help. That's what we do, right? We help people.
Absolutely.
I'm not from the vaping industry or the tobacco industry or anything else. I'm a consumer. But I've got a problem with that. Because we, as you've said, Andy, we've got an awful lot of studies that are coming through that are not being thought through, and they are not consulting people that already use the product. Vapers need to start saying no. Snus users need to start saying no. If you don't engage with us in planning your study, we are not going to help you run your study. If you come up with a law that affects us, no. We're very good at sitting here and doing this is my last bit, we're very good at sitting here and doing our little thing and being all political and very nice. I'm going to use a pun. Good cop, bad cop. There's going to be a lot of people going and making formal presentations at the COP. That ain't what's needed. Dave Dawn would say exactly the same thing if he was here. You have to let people know you're pissed off. It's all very well being political and being scientific, but there is a lot of us, and we need to make ourselves heard.
Yep.
Say no.
Yeah, I totally agree with John there. One thing I will say to researchers is, please, if you're going to do research on e-cigarettes, engage, but not only engage with a vapor and a trusted vapor, budget for one as well. Get it in your budget, make sure you pay him properly, because he's invaluable, I can assure you that. Anyone else want to pick up on that point?
I would just say any research that I've participated in, I've asked to see any IRB requests, any information in advance before saying yes. And so even as a shop, you know, they say, can we come in and ask your customers questions? Absolutely, but first I want to see your research.
Yes, first thing, I just want to say, this was the best presentation I've ever seen in 5 years of GFN. Well done, guys. You're all brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm here every day. Yeah. My question is to the panel. We have a nice split here of trade and consumer. My question is, from the consumer's point of view and from the trade's point of view, how do you see the synergy between consumers and the trade in terms of advocacy? How do you, as trade people, see the consumer as being a part of advocacy? How do you, as a consumer, see the trade and the synergy that develop between the trade and consumers? And how can we leverage what should be a synergy into effective advocacy?
I think that there has been synergy, especially in the early days. I mean, the independent business like us were a lot smaller, and we were a lot closer to the customers, and we talked to the consumer organizations. I think there's also, we need to be careful, given the environment that we're in, that we're not seen to be funding independent advocates, because if that happens, there will be the inevitable accusations that they're industry stooges and that they won't be taken seriously. But there's other ways in which we can work. I think one of the ways we can work is by mobilizing our customer base when there's a crisis. For example, in the run-up to the TPD, and businesses were contacting the customers and saying, look, join the NNA, write letters to your MAP, and I think that's got made a real difference at the time. So careful synergy, maintaining the independence of the consumer organizations.
Thanks, Ed. Did you want to say something there, Ed?
Yeah. Like you said, we can engage our consumer base, and a lot of them would want to help you going onto the right direction. And I will point them to join the French Consumers Association. It's for them. It's very cheap to join, and they can fight, on subjects like CBD, stuff like that. And for example, I've told my customers that I will be joining GFN to give a presentation, and a lot of them ask me, "Can I join? Can I see your presentation?" I say, "Sure. You just have to buy the ticket and go to Warsaw."
Gentleman at the side there.
I'm not a GFN.
Oh, beg pardon. Sorry.
I want to say thank you. I've actually only just come to this industry through Marewa Blubber. I work with her at the centre in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And you were talking about the lies and the bullshit. I was a smoker for years. I was a big packet. Got sick, gave up smoking and became righteous. And I was thinking there was something that was missing in the people that actually trip you guys up. And it is us, the ex-smokers who gave up, the
I had one comment on that. When somebody goes to buy a nice jacket and it costs $100, and then they find out the next day that it went on sale for $50, they're very angry. And so former smokers who didn't have this opportunity because they quit before e-cigarettes or because they never found out about them, they're angry. And we don't blame them, because I'm going to be honest with you, as a 35 cigarette a day smoker, if I had to quit, I would never have quit without e-cigarettes, to be quite frank. I'd have smoked till I died. But, you know, to have to do it the hard way, it isn't fair. And so, of course there's anger. And I don't hold resentment. I just think that educating, like Morewa did, is probably the best way to fix that problem.
Fantastic. Robert's at the back.
I haven't formulated the question yet, but what I want to do is tell you of 2 incidents at the same vape shop which happened recently. It was one of the shops mentioned by you, Andy, as a good example of a good company. Now, the first incident was when my daughter turned to e-cigarettes. I persuaded her to start vaping e-cigarettes. And she went to the vape shop. 6 months after buying her device, she started to have trouble with the battery and took it back to the shop. I looked at her charger, the charging plug that she had been given, and it was a 2-amp charging plug. I then looked up Inicon's own website and looked at the charge that they recommended, and they recommended 1 amp. So my daughter goes back to the shop and tells them what I've just said to you, relates this to them, and they turned around and said, oh, it's been translated from the Chinese, and they've got it wrong. Fair enough. On my way here, I'd forgotten my e-juice, and we passed through the town where that shop was. So I got my daughter, because I'm lazy, I got my daughter to toddle off up to the vape shop and get me 3 bottles of vape juice. When she brought them back, the seals on all 3 bottles were broken. They weren't sealed. It was a plastic cap, the plastic bit underneath, and the perforated edge on it. So what I want to ask is, what is wrong with this particular vape shop? It's and what are the consequences if this sort of thing goes on within the vaping retail industry?
Yeah, I quite agree with that, Robert. That's a shocking situation. It really is bad, and it needs to be stamped out. It's obviously down to training. You did speak with me briefly about this earlier on today, and I'm actually going to mention the company involved, although I don't really like to do that. But the one you were talking about is Vaporized, which is a very big company in Scotland. The reason I praised Vaporized, Alan McClavey in particular, they've been fantastic with us. If I'd have known about that incident, I would have gone to Alan and said, look, you've got a problem here, and he would have addressed it. I guarantee he would have addressed that, both those issues. Alan was brilliant with us in that a couple of years ago, was it a couple of years ago? Oh, I lose track of time. A Billion Lives was about to premiere in the UK, and we actually did the UK premiere in Glasgow. Now, Alan McClavey was instrumental in getting that thing premiered in Glasgow. We were struggling to sell tickets to the public. We had to meet a certain criterion, and believe it or not, the people that let us down were public health and government. They refused to attend this film. We were desperate to get them to go. So what Alan McClavey did was he bought up all 50 tickets that needed to actually get the thing to happen, and he came to me and says, there's 50 tickets, you get rid of them, make sure it happens. I think we ended up with about 35 people there. The only people that let us down were public health, tobacco control, and government, sad to say. But yes, certainly, Vaporized, they've kind of gone off the advocacy scene a little bit, although they did an awful lot of work for us a couple of years ago in getting people to the Scottish Government events, getting them to the Global Forum on Nicotine dialogues. So yeah, that needs taken up. Talk to me later about that and I'll go and see Alan. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Oh, well, got one here in the front. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. My name is Federico Fernandez. Thank you to all the panelists. It was a very interesting one. One comment, very short, to Ángeles, and if someone else wants to react also, it will be welcome. You mentioned at the end of your talk about the issue of vaping being not only effective but also enjoyable. And I would like if you could, go a little bit more deeper about that, because I think it's a great insight.
Okay, I think that this is probably the most important thing of this alternative to smoking. Why can't, we're all adults, why can't we still enjoy nicotine? I like nicotine. I quit smoking 7 years ago, but I still like nicotine. Why can't I enjoy nicotine? So, and of course, a patch won't give me joy, won't give me any pleasure at all. The fact, even the gesture, getting my device, aspiring, letting the vapor come out, it's the same. Look, when you're a smoker, or when you've been a smoker, you know what it is like. The relationship you have with your cigarette. It's not only, for me, it's not an addiction, it's a habit. And you have a relation, for example, if you're working and you want to just take 5 minutes off, you go outside, you sit or whatever, you smoke your cigarette, and you think, and many good ideas can come out from that cigarette. Also, good ideas or bad ideas, it doesn't matter, but you've had your time with your cigarette. So, why can't I still do exactly the same with something that is 95% at least less harmful than combustibles? So I think it's also about freedom of people. I think we're all adults and we can do a little bit what we want. We don't need nannies. I know people in public health must take care, of whatever, people smoking, people dying. They're also losing lots of money in public health, whatever. But this is not going to cost them any money. This is not going to cost them any money. As I said before, this phenomenon was led by us. So it's a consumer's product. And I think freedom of people has to be very, and as John was saying before, I think we have to stand for ourselves. Who has to tell me, I'm 53 years old, is somebody going to tell me, no, you can't vape? It's like, no, you can't drink a beer. I can drink 50 if I want. I can drink 50. I don't drink alcohol, but I can drink 50. If I like to smoke cigarettes, I smoke. But in fact, I quit smoking by accident. I didn't want to quit smoking. I bought a kit, a vaping device, to use it where I wasn't able to smoke. And I remember I got it 7 years ago in August. And I remember I tried it, and then it was 8 p.m., and I realized that I haven't smoked. I smoked 2 packs a day for 30 years. And I said, man, this can't be, is this real? Is this real? This is a miracle. And it worked. So nobody's going to make me, I don't care about the rules. Nobody's going to ban my e-cigs. Of course, I like products being regulated. I want to know what I'm vaping. But as I said before, there has to be some justice.
Thanks very much. One more question in the middle there, please. Sorry, Zed.
Quite quickly, just a great part of that enjoyment comes from one's favorite flavor. And I think Spike insisted on that quite heavily, so I'm not going to comment on it further, but...
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks for a great session. A quick disclosure. I'm working as somebody who works along with the industry to design new products, new vaping products. And I just, out of interest, wonder if there's a quick show of hands in the room for who else is here who's come from that side of the equation. I can see very few people, which I find quite amazing, since this is a session that says what do consumers need. I would have thought that would be the main driver for designers of these products to come and listen to what the actual consumers are saying. So it's a moot point, it's a political point, if you like. However, I am intrigued by the fact that the reasons given for why people are choosing to vape are various and deep. And what is quite clear is that there is a pushback against the concept of addiction. We've talked about habit, we've talked about dependence, but clearly nobody in this room feels that they are an addict or addicted in that sort of, shall we say, psychological sense to tobacco and to, well, in this case, nicotine. That's interesting, because the perspective of the people in the other sessions, and I expect it's universal there, is that you are nicotine addicts. And I'm talking about the public health people, the academics, the medics, even the industry see you as passive recipients of nicotine. You're not actually active consumers, but you're just there to take your nicotine hit on a regular basis. And there's still clearly a big divergence between yourself as the users and those people who are supposed to be serving you. That could be the regulator, it could be the industry, it could be the academics, it could be the medical community. So I'd come to this meeting, I've been to the GFN before, and I came to this meeting in the expectation that that gap would actually close this time around. There would be a discussion on nicotine. But what I'm hearing in the other sections, they're still discussing, let's talk about nicotine addiction. Whereas you people are saying, let's talk about nicotine. And I find that interesting. Just a comment.
No, that's absolutely true. I'll give you a prime example of that. It used to be when I was a smoker, I'd go, if I was to leave the house without my cigarettes, I could be a mile down the road. I would have to go back for those cigarettes. Now, if I go out without my vaporizer, it's not such an issue. It's no problem. I'm going to think, I'll be all right till I get home. Absolutely fantastic. So is it an addiction? No, not really. It's a pleasure. You enjoy nicotine. Sometimes you use it for stress. I can be sitting at home. I'm a computer programmer, and I get stressed out quite easily. You know, having to think through logical things. And nicotine helps. It's great. You can sort of sit there, take a couple of drags of your vaporizer, and all of a sudden, you're calm again. You can revisit the problem. But you're right. Is it an addiction? I don't think so.
I think, you know, a few people will notice when they are vapors and they misplace their e-cigarette and they're looking all over the place for it, that when they find it, they don't puff it. They just want to have it. So for a lot of us, it's just a matter of I need a pacifier to know that it's there psychologically. I had a car accident 9 years ago. I had been vaping already for a year and a half, and I was off of nicotine. I weaned down to 0 when I first started vaping, and I had been off nicotine for almost a year. And after the accident, I'm looking in the car because I didn't know what was going on. Where's my cigarettes? And then I said, oh my God, I quit smoking. Where's my e-cigarettes? And I found it, and I was on 0 nicotine for a year already. And I'm in the car, and there's flames coming out of the front. I took one puff, and I was like, okay, I'm good now. I need to call the police, need to make sure that there's an accident report, make sure the lady behind me is okay since she hit me. But it was no nicotine. It's not necessarily about that. For people like us who have been smoking cigarettes for 20 and 30 and 40 years, it's about the pacifier.
Yeah, I would just like to add something to that. I agree with Andy when he said that it's not an addiction, because me personally, in the office that I work in, smoking or vaping, it's not allowed. Snooze is even not allowed also. But what I would do, I'd leave my kit at home, and I don't find myself looking for it the whole day. There's a store right across, and I'm not tempted to buy a pack of cigarettes. So I don't think it's an addiction with nicotine. For me, nicotine works more like as a stimulator. Because I find myself puffing only when studying, because I'm in law school. That's very stressful. And when I'm working at home. But in between, I don't find myself looking for it. And I've tried 0, I've tried 3 milligram, I've tried 6, I've tried 12, to and fro. And I don't think that if I were addicted to it, then I would have been on it because there are some stronger nicotines. In the Philippines, I think the strongest we have is around 20 or 30. And if I wanted nicotine that bad, I would have gone for something with that level, right?
I just want to say one thing. There's also, when a smoker is making the switch, the smoker normally is using more nicotine. It also depends on the device you're using. When you've been vaping for 7 years, you enjoy more of the flavors than the nicotine. And you lower down the nicotine. But you don't have to avoid the nicotine. And in fact, I as a smoker and now vapor, I can tell you that right now it's much different. It's much different. It's not the same. For example, when I was hooked on the habit of smoking, mortal habit, I think it's different. I could resist more. I couldn't resist without a cigarette. I mean, I was, and vaping is different. Now I enjoy the flavors and, of course, a bit of nicotine. So it's also up to the user.
Yeah, I totally agree there. That's one thing that happens straight away. I mean, I started on 36 milligram nicotine. That's the only thing that would get me tipped over to quit. And I'm down at 12 now. Still using very similar devices. I use mouth to lung. John, quick last question from you.
It's not so much a question, it's a feedback on the observation you made about research. Now, you're absolutely right. There's an awful lot of researchers out there that are still using the word addiction. Not all of them. So if you talk to people like Andy McEwen, Peter Hayek, Hannah Redmond, who was at my old university, bless her heart, they don't talk about that. Why? Well, they don't need to. But a lot of those guys are actually more addicted to the concept of nicotine addiction than we are to nicotine.
Yeah, well said.
They have to use it. They are being forced to use it by those around them, and they have to use it to get their money.
Okay, doc. Right, that about rounds it up for us today here. Thank you so much for attending. It's absolutely brilliant. Thanks to my panelists. I mean, what a bunch of people. Fantastic, yeah. And of course, I must say this and I must stress it one more time. Thank you very much to Jessica Harding and all the team at GFN for plugging this gap. It was much, much needed. And let's do it again next year. Thank you. Well done, guys.